I'm Luis. I'm 22 years old, and I work at a McDonald's in my city in the United States. This isn't my dream job, but it's not bad. There are some frustrating, albeit small, situations that happen, like customers asking for changes to their orders at the last minute, kids running all over the place, and the classic stress of night shifts. But there's one particular experience that happened a few months ago that I can't stop thinking about. It's something that still disturbs me to this day. It was one of those quiet shifts that suddenly became heavy because it was late and you just want to go home. I was in charge of cleaning the playground area, the slides, tunnels, and ball pit. It was late, and normally, there aren't many kids around at that time because families start to leave. But that day, there were still a few kids left. I remember a lady arrived with 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. They weren't very big. The oldest was about 7 years old, the boy was around 5 or 6, and the youngest was about 4. The lady let them play while she sat at one of the tables. The kids looked normal, laughing and running around like any kids would. I was cleaning near the entrance to the playground, and I watched them out of the corner of my eye while I did my job. I liked hearing them laugh, but something caught my attention. Even though there were only 3 kids in that area, the girls seemed to be plotting something while the boy was happily throwing balls. The girls suddenly became serious, and the older one was whispering something into the younger one's ear. I felt some concern when it seemed like they were arguing about something in a low voice. The younger girl seemed scared, as if the older one was demanding something from her. Not only that, but the older sister suddenly changed her expression. She looked serious, almost angry, while looking towards the ball pit where her brother was. I stopped to observe a little more because the atmosphere felt strange. I don't know how to explain it, but it was as if the atmosphere had become very tense, as if something didn't fit. A few minutes passed, and the lady called her children because it was time to leave. The little kids ran towards her, but the older girl didn't come out. She stayed in the ball pit. I approached her and said, "Hey, your mom is already calling you. It's time to go." The girl looked at me but didn't say anything. She just sat there among the balls, as if she didn't want to move. I went to where the lady was with the 2 children and told her that her daughter was still in the ball pit. She looked at me confused and answered something that left me frozen. I thought she was playing a joke on me or that I hadn't heard well. I insisted, "Ma'am, your oldest daughter is still in the ball pit. She just doesn't want to leave." The lady shook her head and even seemed a little uncomfortable. I came alone with my 2 children. There was no one else there. That's when I got totally confused. I returned to the playground to look for the girl, but when I arrived, there was no one there. I checked every corner, the slide, the tunnels, the corners. Everything was as if the girl had never been there. I went back to the lady, confused, and told her that I didn't see the girl anymore. Then something strange happened. The lady asked me what the girl I had seen looked like. I described the girl, long dark hair, light brown, and she was wearing a dark gray dress with black shoes. When I finished describing her, the lady went silent. Her expression changed completely. She looked pale, as if she had seen a ghost. She asked me to repeat the description, and when I did, she told me something I'll never forget. That description matches exactly with my daughter's imaginary friend. I didn't know what to say, but then she started telling me more. Apparently, her daughter had been talking about an imaginary friend for months. She called her Luna and said that they played together. The family hadn't given it much importance at first because, kids make things up. But things had gotten weirder. The girl said that Luna asked her to do bad things, like break things or misbehave with her brother. It wasn't just that. The girl started saying things that weren't appropriate for her age. Negative thoughts and phrases full of hate that seemed to come from the darkest part of a person. In fact, she told me that they had already taken her to a psychologist because they were worried, but the doctors didn't find anything out of the ordinary. They only said that it was probably a phase or something like that. But the mother was convinced that there was something more, especially because, according to her daughter, Luna was always with her. Now that I had described a girl who matched that imaginary friend, it left her in shock. At that moment, I didn't know what to think. I tried to calm the lady down, telling her that maybe it was just a coincidence. But the truth is, I wasn't calm either. What I saw didn't feel like a simple child's imagination. It was something more. The environment, the way the girl interacted, and above all, how she disappeared without a trace. Everything was very strange. The lady left with her children, but before leaving, she told me something that made me think even more. If that girl was Luna, then she's not just an imaginary friend. Something is following my daughter, and I'm sure it's something very dark. That phrase has haunted me ever since. I can't help but wonder what that girl was that I saw that night. Was she a demon, a spirit, or just a hallucination of mine? But if it was just my imagination, why did the mother react like that? How come my description matched exactly what her daughter had said? Since that night, I can't stop thinking about what happened. I've tried to convince myself that it was my imagination or some misunderstanding, but there's something inside me that doesn't let me be calm. Every time I pass by the playground, I feel a strange weight, as if something invisible was present. Although I can't explain it with words, what worries me the most is the mother's expression when I described the girl to her. It was not just fear. It was as if something she was trying to ignore had suddenly come to life. What did I see that night? Because that girl seemed so real. I don't know if it was a coincidence, something paranormal, or if I'm tying up loose ends that don't exist. But I wonder what that imaginary friend wanted. Why was she following her daughter? Now I ask you, what do you think it was? Do you think these things can really happen? That something like a demon or an entity can follow a child, pretending to be an imaginary friend? I would really like to read your opinions because this is something that I still cannot fully understand. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe the channel for future videos, and like and share with your friends. I'm Daniel. I'm 22 years old, and I work at a McDonald's in Los Angeles to pay for my engineering studies. Working the night shift can be tough, not just because it's tiring, but because the environment is different. The early morning feels like another world. The streets are empty, the clientele is different, and things just feel strange. Nothing out of the ordinary had ever happened to me until that night. I still remember every detail as if it were yesterday. That shift, I had to work with Marco, who is my age, and Don Hector, the manager. The three of us got along well, so I thought it would be a quiet night. First, everything was normal. We had a few customers who came from bars and a couple of families who came for the famous midnight burger. By 2 a.m., everything was clean, organized, and ready to close. We were waiting for the last customers to leave when things took a turn. It was around 1 a.m. when a man walked in. The moment I saw him, something made me uncomfortable. He looked to be around 50 years old, with sloppy clothes, a wrinkled jacket, and an old suitcase. He walked slowly, looking around as if he was analyzing everything. He came to the counter and ordered a hamburger. Up to that point, everything was fine, but then he started asking weird questions. What time do you close? How many employees are here at night? Do you have cameras? I answered politely, but each question made me more nervous. Marco was in the back preparing the order, and he also realized that something wasn't right. The man took his food and sat at the back of the place, at a table near the window. That's when things started to get weird. He wasn't eating. He was just sitting there with his suitcase on the floor, staring at us. It was like he was waiting for something. I tried to ignore him and keep working, but I couldn't help but see him out of the corner of my eye. Marco, who always joked around, was serious this time. "What's up with that guy?" he asked me in a low voice. I answered that I had no idea, but that everything felt very strange. Don Hector heard us and told us not to pay attention. He was just another customer, but something in me knew it wasn't that simple. Almost an hour passed, and the man was still there, motionless. By that point, we had already cleaned the kitchen and were finishing up the dining area. Marco and I started joking around to ease the tension, but then the man got up and approached the counter. He didn't say anything. He put his suitcase down, opened it, and took out a large kitchen knife. He placed it on the counter while looking at us with a smile that was anything but normal. I don't know if it was a mockery, a threat, or what, but that smile froze my blood. Marco took a step back, and I froze. "Sir, we are going to close now. I'm going to ask you to leave, please," said Don Hector, trying to sound calm. The man didn't respond. He simply picked up the knife, put it back in his suitcase, and returned to his table. We stayed in silence, not knowing what to do. Marco told me in a low voice to call the police, but Don Hector stopped us. He told us not to do anything that could provoke him because he was clearly not right in the head. He said we should just finish quickly and close the place. Once we were outside, we could call the police. The man stood for a while longer, staring into space. Every now and then, he shook his head as if he was talking to someone, but he was alone. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stood up, took his suitcase, and walked towards the door. Before leaving, he stopped, looked directly at me, and said, "I'll see you later soon." Then he quietly left and walked away until he was out of sight. As soon as he left, we locked up and finished turning everything off in silence. None of us said anything. We were just relieved that he was gone and hurried to leave. That night, when I got home, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about how disturbing the situation was, and those words he said to me, as if threatening me that I would see him again soon and something bad would happen. The next day, when I returned to work, Don Hector called me to the office to show me something. He had reviewed the security camera recordings. You could see the man entering the premises, but what left us frozen was what happened before that. In the images of the parking lot, the man was standing in front of the restaurant for at least half an hour before entering, looking directly towards the counter. The strangest thing was that you couldn't see where he had come from. There was no car, and he didn't walk from the street. He simply appeared on the corner, as if he had come out of the darkness. After that day, I could no longer accept the night shifts. I couldn't work there anymore. Marco also resigned a few months later, and although we never talked much about the subject, I know that he was also affected. I still think about that man and what he said before he left. I don't know if he had bad intentions or if he was just crazy, but something in his look and presence was not normal. I don't believe in paranormal things or ghosts, but that experience made me understand that true terror can come from people like him. I would like to ask you, who are listening to my story, what would you have done in my place? Would you have confronted that man, or would you have acted differently? Let me know your opinion in the comments, because to this day, I still wonder if I made the right decisions. Since I didn't have a conclusion about that incident, I'm still afraid of running into him again, or worse, that he's watching me to hurt me when I least expect it. I'm Mariana. I'm 24 years old, and I've been working at McDonald's for about 3 years now. It's a pretty normal job, but sometimes things happen that you wouldn't even imagine in your wildest dreams. Today, I want to tell you about something that happened at the restaurant where I work, an experience that still gives me goosebumps when I remember it. It was a night like any other, one of those nights where you have a line of customers that seems like it will never end. It was all movement, all stress, but nothing out of the ordinary. I was in the kitchen preparing orders when suddenly I heard shouting in the checkout area. I looked out to see what was happening, and there was this tall, thin lady. I don't even know how to describe the look on her face, but it gave me a bad feeling from the first moment. She was wearing a black dress, looked very haggard, and had an expression as if she was really angry with everyone. She went straight to the checkout, pushing herself between a couple of customers who were in line, and began demanding her order as if we had already done something wrong. She immediately rushed us by hitting the counter in a shrill voice that echoed throughout the place. The person at the checkout was Carla, a coworker who had been on the job a little longer than me. She had always been strong-willed and didn't let anyone get in her way. Carla said to her very calmly but firmly, "Ma'am, you have to wait your turn. There are more people in line before you." The lady didn't say anything but gave her a look that I will never forget. It was a look full of hate, as if she wanted to hurt her. At that same moment, I felt chills run through my body, and I don't think I was the only one. Other co-workers also turned to look at this woman with dismayed faces. Before anyone could react, the lady was on top of Carla. Suddenly, she grabbed her by the hair so hard that she pulled out a lock of hair and almost slammed her onto the checkout. Carla screamed in pain and tried to get her off, but it happened so fast that no one could do much. The lady, with the lock of hair in her hand, ran out of the store as if nothing had happened. It was so unreal that it seemed like a movie. One of the customers tried to follow her but couldn't reach her. She just disappeared into the night. Carla was in shock. She stood there holding her head, looking at the piece of hair that had been ripped out. Obviously, we called the police, but when they arrived, there wasn't much they could do. They checked the cameras but didn't see much, just the lady leaving in a hurry. It seemed like just another incident of an aggressive, crazy woman. But what happened next is what left us all with our mouths open. Soon after, Carla started to get sick. At first, it was small things like frequent colds or headaches that wouldn't go away. Then she started to lose weight alarmingly. It was strange because Carla had always been a very healthy person. She exercised and ate well. The doctors couldn't find anything, but she looked worse and worse at work. We said that maybe it was stress because the truth is that experience with the lady had left her quite nervous. The worst came a few weeks later. One night, Carla left work and drove home as usual. The next day, we found out that she had had an accident. She lost control of her vehicle and crashed into a pole. The strange thing is that the doctors said it wasn't the impact that killed her. Apparently, she had suffered a cardiac arrest while driving. Her heart just stopped out of nowhere. Carla was only 27 years old and had never had health problems. That's when we started to connect the dots. We remembered the lady, the lock of hair, and the look she gave Carla. One of our companions, who is a big believer in witchcraft, said that surely that woman had done something to her, like a curse or something. I don't know much about those things, but the truth is that what happened to Carla was very strange. Since then, I'm scared to remember that lady. I don't know if it was a coincidence or something more, but that whole situation left its mark on all of us who were there that night. What do you think? Do you think it's possible that that lady did something to Carla? Or was it just a series of unfortunate events? I find it hard to believe, but after what I saw, I'm not so sure anymore. I would love to read your opinions. If you have experienced something similar or know someone who has gone through something like this, leave me your comments. This is truly something that keeps going around in my head. This terrible experience that I barely came out of alive happened to me and two friends in a McDonald's fast food restaurant. Or rather, that's what we thought. Hello, I'm Santiago Jimenez. 2 years ago, I went on vacation with my two friends to a beach in California. That night, we were planning to camp near the ocean. It was a beach away from the city, and there were no places to eat nearby. Night fell and we started to get hungry. We had some snacks, but we wanted to eat something in a restaurant. We were on bikes, so we decided to explore a road to see if we could find a business area. We were going through the mountains, but there was nothing nearby except the road and cars passing by. We kept pedaling when, in the distance, we saw a McDonald's. But it was different. It was like a very large camper van. We found it very curious, but it was something new for us, so we were even more excited to go eat there. We arrived and parked our bikes. Upon entering, we were greeted by 3 employees who acted exaggeratedly friendly. All of them wore caps and face masks, even though it is no longer mandatory to wear them in the United States. There were 2 men and a woman serving the place. Upon entering, we noticed it was empty. We were the only customers. We ordered our food and went to sit down. The place was small since it was a restaurant on wheels. My friend and I were talking when suddenly my friend Esteban told us, "Don't turn around." But the girl serving has been staring over here for a while without doing anything. It started to bother me. My friend Ricardo laughed and said, "She probably likes you," making fun of her and telling her that she had already hooked up. But my friend Esteban responded very seriously and said, "Is this serious?" She looks at us very strangely and hasn't taken her eyes off for a single second. Even though I turned to look at her, I told him to calm down. I decided to change my position so that she couldn't see me anymore. Now I had her in front of me, and my friend Esteban was right. The girl had a very penetrating look and kept looking at us. Suddenly, another employee brought us our food. We took it and thanked him, but the guy didn't leave. He was standing there next to us as if waiting for something. My friend Ricardo, who was the most extroverted, told him, "We don't need anything else, thank you," waiting for the guy to leave. He kept staring at each of us and then walked away. We turned around to see each other, wondering what had happened. Ricardo made fun of it and said that the employees there were weird. I told him to shut up because maybe they could hear us. In all that time, they hadn't stopped watching us. Now the 3 employees were behind the counter, standing there and doing absolutely nothing, just watching us. I told my friends to eat quickly and get out of there because I didn't feel comfortable anymore. As soon as we tried the food, it tasted really bad, like the meat was overcooked. It wasn't like the typical hamburgers from any other McDonald's. The meat tasted rancid. Ricardo didn't hide it one bit, and when he tried the food, he spit it out and yelled, "This is disgusting." Esteban told him to shut up because the employees kept staring at us. Ricardo said he was going to the bathroom and then we would get out of there. He was very upset because it had been a waste of time and money to get there. He got up and went into the bathroom. Then we saw that 2 of the employees that were at the counter had gone back. Now only the girl was there. Suddenly, someone knocked on the glass from outside. We turned around and it was a couple. They yelled at us in English, "Get out of there!" Just then, the girl started approaching the table. The couple that had warned us to leave ran off. Esteban and I were a little tense. The girl came over and said, "Do you need anything else?" We told her no, thank you very much. Then she asked us if we didn't like our food. I told her yes, but that we had decided to take it to eat on the beach. Then she started looking at us, and the kindness she had shown since we arrived disappeared. She stopped smiling and now she looked at us furiously. She was still standing there next to our table. It was a very awkward moment, and my friend and I didn't know what to say, until, without saying anything, she left. Esteban said to me, "Let's get out of here now." I got up and grabbed my things, and we headed to the bathroom to look for our friend Ricardo to leave. But when we entered the bathroom, it wasn't really a bathroom. It was a room with just a lamp on, and you couldn't see almost anything. Esteban immediately tried to open the door to get out, but the door didn't open. He started to get desperate and shout for them to open it for us. I was in shock, and all I did was yell at my friend Ricardo because he wasn't there anymore. We didn't know where they had taken him or what was happening. I wanted to take out my cell phone, but when I put my hand in my pockets, I realized I didn't have it with me. I didn't know if they had taken it without me realizing it because I was sure I had it with me. Esteban had left it on the table. We were trapped there, incommunicado, without knowing where our friend was and without knowing what they wanted to do to us. Suddenly, we felt how we started to move. They were taking us to another place. Esteban started to cry. I was trying to keep him calm because one of us had to be sane. Suddenly, we saw that on the other side of the room, a door opened and light was coming through it. I took my friend by the arm and we walked over there. The first thing we saw was our friend Ricardo, tied hand and foot, crying. When we turned our heads, it was all a carnage, but a human one. The smell coming out of there was disgusting. I can't explain how bad it smelled, and all the remains of people that were there. I untied Ricardo, but Esteban wasn't reacting. He was in a very severe state of shock, seeing all of that. I told them, "We have to get out of here." At that moment, Ricardo pointed to a corner, and there they were, watching us. The 3 employees who had served us were approaching us, cornering us. I told them with my voice trembling, "What do you want from us? Why are you doing this to us?" But they didn't respond. At that moment, they took off their caps and masks. Their faces were deformed. It was something horrible, as if they were mutants or something. But no, they were talking. Each one had a knife in their hands, and I couldn't turn around or see how macabre they looked. I still dream about it at night. Then they signaled us to sit down. My friends and I just obeyed. We were too scared. Then they took Ricardo by the arm and put him on a scale. They were weighing him to see how much meat they could get from him to sell in the restaurant, as if he were an animal. He wouldn't stop crying. I just told him to obey, that everything would be okay, although I had no idea what was going to happen. Suddenly, we heard the engine turn off and we stopped moving. The 3 mutants left the room, and outside we could hear a man's voice. It seemed like he was scolding them. He sounded very angry and was telling them if they were crazy, that someone could have seen them or taken us and could discover them. But they didn't speak. It seemed as if they didn't even know how to speak. But that guy seemed to be the leader. Suddenly, we heard some footsteps entering. He was a giant subject, measuring a little more than 2 meters. His appearance was horrendous. His face was also disfigured, and he stared at the three of us from top to bottom. He said to us, "I hope your meat gives us more clients." "Well, these ones already know Rancid," pointing to the remains that were there of other people. Esteban began to cry, begging him to let us go, that we wouldn't tell anyone. But the guy just made fun of us with a sinister laugh. Then he went out and started talking to his 3 employees. I took the opportunity to talk to my friends and told them that I needed them strong to be able to escape from there. That as soon as they opened the door, we had to run out with all our strength, because if we didn't, we were going to end up in that carnage. Ricardo said he was ready. We struggled a bit to calm Esteban down, but we made it. We were ready for our luck. The one who opened the door was the girl, so we went out with all our strength and knocked her down very easily. We ran out at full speed. We could hear how the subjects were coming behind us, chasing us, laughing with that macabre and chilling laugh. On the road, I could notice that we were in the middle of nowhere, in the woods, and there were a lot of remains everywhere. It looked like a cemetery. We ran without stopping until we reached the highway. The guys were no longer following us. We asked the cars that passed by, but nobody wanted to stop until finally, a truck driver stopped. We got in and told him to call the police. Ricardo, who spoke English the best, explained to them everything that had happened. The police went to the place, but the mobile restaurant was no longer there. Although they found many remains of people in that forest, we returned to Mexico the next day. We just wanted to get home to our families and get over this huge trauma. Apparently, they never found those guys, but one thing was for sure: that fake mobile McDonald's could be anywhere in the world, selling human meat hamburgers and looking for its next victims. Hey everyone, I'm Estefania. A few years ago, when I was in college, I had the night shift at a fast food restaurant in the United States. It's pretty common for these places to be open 24 hours, and there were only 3 of us working that shift because it was usually pretty quiet. I remember it was a Tuesday in the early morning. My colleague was cleaning the bathrooms, and my other colleague and I were at the counter. There were no customers, so we were just chatting. Suddenly, a man walked in. He was dressed in a black suit and hat, and he was very tall. He caught your attention the moment you saw him. He went straight to sit at a table in the back. My colleague and I were ready for when he would come to order, but he never got up. He was sitting with his back to us. I said to my colleague, "What should we do? We can't let anyone be there without eating." But we're a little embarrassed to go tell him he has to leave if he doesn't order anything. So we went to find our other colleague to see if he would be the one to tell him. He didn't want to, but we convinced him. He approached the man, and as soon as he was about to tell him about our policy, the man got up and left through the other door. My friend turned to look at us with a confused face. We made fun of him and didn't give it any more importance. We continued cleaning the place. I was watching the entrance when suddenly I saw the man outside, standing behind my car but looking towards the restaurant. His face couldn't be seen because it was very dark, but I knew it was him because of his height, his hat, and the way he was dressed. I moved from the window and told my companions immediately. They ran to look out, but the man was no longer there. My companion asked me if I was sure of what I had seen. He told me that maybe it had been a shadow or something like that, but I was sure it was him. A few minutes passed, and my companion went out to take out the garbage in the dumpster behind the restaurant. Suddenly, he came back running and somewhat agitated. We asked him what had happened, and he said that the man was there behind a bush, watching him while he took out the garbage. He got very scared and started to run immediately. We went to the small office to check the cameras, but the man wasn't seen in any shot. But when my friend turned one of the cameras downwards, you could see part of the guy's hat. He was right in the office window watching us. He was spying on us. We turned quickly to the window, but the guy was no longer there. But he kept appearing on the camera. How was that possible? My partner and I ran out of there. My partner looked out but couldn't see anyone. I decided to call the police because at that point we felt very unsafe. A few minutes later, the patrol car arrived, and we told the officers that the man had been spying on us all night. The officers checked the surroundings but didn't find him. They asked us for a copy of the recording tapes, and my partner gave them to them. They left and told us that if we needed to, we could call 911. After that, the night went by normally. I left at 9 a.m., and I was the one who always stayed behind to wait for the next shift to arrive. I was already completely alone in the place when I heard noises in the bathroom. I dropped the coffee I was drinking out of fright and said, "Hello." I wanted to believe that it had been a customer who had come in without me noticing while I was making coffee. But nobody answered. I went a little closer to the bathroom and heard footsteps inside. I grabbed my things and ran out of the place when the guy from the next shift was arriving. I waited for him to get out of the car and told him the situation. We went back in, and he slowly approached the bathroom, knocked on the door, and asked if anyone was there, but there was no answer. When he opened the door, we saw that the bathroom was empty. I was very scared. I got in my car and left. The next night, when I got to work, the guy told me that I had received a package. I thought it was strange because I never ordered anything to that address. I thanked him and went to the office to get it. It was a small box. When I opened the package, I got the biggest scare of my life because it was the same hat as the guy from the night before. There was no address written on it where the package had been sent from. It only had my name on it. I thought it was a bad joke by my other colleagues, so I went out and complained to them, but they told me they didn't know what I was talking about. I showed them the hat, and they were as surprised as I was. They immediately recognized it. I was very upset and scared at the same time. When I saw an officer enter the restaurant, he asked to speak with us because he had information from the videos that had been taken the night before. He told us that they had analyzed the recordings and that it was a serial killer who had terrorized California in recent years. His victims were mostly women. He first spied on them for a few days before committing his atrocious crimes. In the videos from previous days, the subject appeared in the recordings of the restaurant. He had been stalking me for several days. I was his next victim, but there was something that had them confused because 2 nights ago, a police officer had taken his life with 2 shots when they wanted to capture him and he tried to flee. So they didn't know how we had seen him the night before if he was already dead. I was terrified. My colleagues took my hands, giving me encouragement. I told them that they had sent me a hat and showed it to them. But I hadn't noticed something. The hat had a small hole and a blood stain that I didn't notice at first. The policeman saw it and immediately recognized it. He told us, "This is what the guy was wearing when he was shot." I began to cry. The officer told me not to worry, that he couldn't hurt me anymore since he was no longer alive. I was scared for several months. Sometime later, it was proven that the hat was the same as the guy's since the DNA matched. They never knew where the package had been sent from. It wasn't even the guy that my colleagues and I saw that night. There was no explanation other than it was him, and he wanted to finish what he started. Even though he was dead, he wanted to end my life.